I stepped through the heavy oak doors of St. Mary's Church with a knot of anxiety twisting in my stomach and faint echoes of hushed murmurs washing over me like a cold tide. Every polished pew seemed to vibrate with uneasy tension as pairs of dark suits and somber dresses turned toward me, their lips moving silently in disapproval. Their eyes darted along my face, searching for signs of guilt or deceit, but I held my chin high and ignored their judgmental stares. A fragile bouquet of lilies quivered in my trembling hands, white petals symbolizing purity and innocence, though neither seemed welcome in this sacred space. I had come to honor someone I deeply loved, despite the whispers that I did not belong, and I refused to let their fear dictate my choices. A single lawyer seated near the altar nodded at me, his expression steady and resolute, firmly. My heart pounded as I made my way toward the front row, where a polished pine casket lay beneath, a cascade of white roses and trembling candles. I clenched my jaw against the ache in my chest, recalling the night that changed every certainty I held. The police report had called it an accident. The coroner had declared her dead, and the world had moved on. Yet I had survived her final moments, cradling her head in my arms as life slipped away. That truth had cost me my reputation, forcing me to vanish into shadows while the lawyer fought tooth and nail to challenge her death certificate. His unwavering faith in my testimony was a lifeline, and I trusted him with every fragment of my shattered reality. Now I needed his voice more than ever, a beacon in a sea of doubt and whispers. His presence gave me hope. I paused before stepping down the center aisle, confronting a congregation of strangers and acquaintances whose lives had diverged from ours the moment tragedy struck. Mothers dabbed at reddened eyes behind palms, fathers exchanged curt nods, and children sat rigidly beside their grieving mothers, unsure where they belonged. My vision blurred with unshed tears, but I refused to yield. I remembered every raised eyebrow, every whispered admonition that I should not be inhaling the same air as the departed. They believed I had no right to stand here alive at this ceremony. Yet I had proof, documented and notarized, signed by medical experts who confirmed that her heart had flatlined for over an hour before I revived it. The lawyer had presented those records yesterday during a tense hearing, his voice steady as he dismantled the defense argument piece by piece. His victory had earned me this contested invitation. Finally, I advanced to the front of the sanctuary with measured steps, each footfall echoing off stained glass windows depicting saints and sinners intertwined in vivid hues. The velvet kneeler at the foot of the casket invited me to pause for one final moment of silent supplication. I rested my trembling palms upon its plush surface and closed my eyes, letting memories of her laughter and warm embrace wash over me. Somewhere beyond the oak doors, the wind whispered through ancient oaks, carrying the scent of rain and distant seashells from our childhood summers. I imagined her voice urging me to stand tall, to claim my right to grieve. Behind me, the soft scrape of a chair drew my attention. The lawyer rose and gestured for me to follow him to a small antechamber, where he would prepare me for the upcoming legal challenge before any further ceremony could proceed. Immediately, inside the dimly lit antechamber, the air felt heavy with anticipation and the faint aroma of old leather and dust. Portraits of solemn judges lined the walls as if they watched my every move, reminding me that this was more than a morning ritual. The lawyer closed the door and leaned against a walnut desk, his eyes compelling me to meet his gaze. His voice was soft but unwavering as he outlined the objections the coroner's office planned to raise. They would argue that my testimony was unreliable, that the moment of revival had been overstated, and that her death certificate stood unassailable. Under current statutes, I swallowed hard, fighting the urge to tremble. He placed a reassuring hand on my shoulder, telling me that we had an airtight case grounded in physiological data and credible eyewitness accounts. Their proof could not withstand scrutiny. Once presented before the judge thoroughly, I straightened my shoulders and nodded, steeling myself for what lay ahead. The lawyer slid open the door and gestured toward the funeral hall, where the murmur of condolences had resumed as if I had vanished for a moment. I returned to my seat beside the casket, placing the lily bouquet on the smooth wooden lid. Each flower a silent promise that I would fight for the truth. Faces turned once more, some warming slightly at the sight of the attorney by my side, others recoiling as if haunted by a specter. A priest's voice rose from the altar, announcing the beginning of a eulogy that I refused to hear until our legal battle concluded. As the first mournful notes of the organ filled the air, I felt a surge of determination and dread mingling within me. Here I would either vindicate her memory or be consumed by doubt completely. The funeral ceremony had reached a solemn pause, the priest's soft liturgy suspended as the lawyer gently touched my arm and motioned toward a discreet side entrance. My pulse throbbed against my temples and I followed him through a narrow corridor illuminated by sconce light, leaving behind the collective gasps and whispered judgments. In the hush of the hallway, the sweet fragrance of lilies lingered, a poignant reminder of both purity and vulnerability. My breathing was shallow, each inhale threatening to betray my composure. The lawyer closed an oak door and turned to me, his eyes unwavering and commanding confidence. Without a word, he slid 2 folders across a mahogany table. In one sat medical charts and time-stamped monitors, in the other testimony transcripts. We were about to shift from mourning to battle, and every step felt surreal. The lawyer's voice was calm and precise as he briefed me on the next phase of our challenge. He reminded me that every detail of my recollection would be scrutinized by skeptical experts and hostile witnesses appointed by the coroner's office. I nodded, my throat dry. They will question how I maintained consciousness long enough to perform the resuscitation, he said, and they will argue that the electrical readings could have been misinterpreted. I felt a jolt of anger at the suggestion that science could be twisted so easily. Yet I knew he was right. He had endured similar tactics in previous hearings. As he spoke, I remembered his determination during our initial filing. In that moment, I felt anchored by his confidence, ready to stand before the judge and present the truth without hesitation or fear. During the long night when her life hung by a fragile thread, I had acted on instinct rather than certainty. I remembered the coastal highway winding along the cliffs as we drove home, her laughter filling the car until an unexpected gust sent us careening off the guardrail. The world tumbled as glass shattered and metal groaned. When darkness swallowed my vision, I found her beneath a canopy of broken stars, her pulse faint but discernible. I knelt in the rain as I forced air into her lungs and pressed my hands against her chest with my strength. Minutes passed with agonizing slowness until a flicker on the monitor signaled her heart's response. I cradled her fragile form, whispering her name until color returned to her cheeks. That memory stood as proof of what I owed her. Returning to the funeral hall felt strange, the stained glass casting colored light across skeptical faces. The priest was mid-hymn when the lawyer rose with calm and signaled the coroner's representative to stand. Silence fell and a hush replaced the organ's notes. My heart hammered as I watched the coroner's expert approach the casket's edge. He cleared his throat and cited standard protocol, insisting that no resuscitation could have succeeded after 30 minutes without causing irreversible damage. His tone was clinical, detached, as if life and death were mere data points. The lawyer responded by presenting a report from independent neurologists who confirmed her full cognitive recovery. As he spoke, I clasped my bouquet tighter and scanned the congregation. Whispers rippled through the aisles, waiting for the next move. My gaze swept across the row of familiar faces. Neighbors who once offered condolences now exchanged uneasy glances. Some had offered polite sympathy, then shut their doors, afraid that proximity might taint them. Others avoided eye contact, as if they believed whispers that I had tampered with fate itself. In that moment, I realized how quickly trust could erode when confronted by events that defied explanation. The weight of their suspicion pressed against my chest more heavily than any grief. Yet among the sea of doubt, I saw a few individuals whose eyes held recognition and support: the schoolteacher who once guided her reading skills, the retired firefighter who helped load the ambulance, and the librarian who donated books in her memory. Their quiet solidarity gave me the strength to believe that truth would prevail. It felt like a lifeline amid despair. At that moment, a hush fell over the room as the judge arrived. His robes swirled like dark water around him. He carried a leather folder that seemed to throb with authority as he consulted it. I straightened, my heart thrumming with anticipation and dread. The lawyer held his breath beside me. The judge cleared his throat and spoke each word deliberately, acknowledging the extraordinary circumstances and the testimony laid before him. Every tick of the antique clock on the wall echoed in my ears while ancestors and saints looked down from stained glass as though awaiting justice. I gripped the hymnal in my lap, nails digging into the paper, bracing myself for the verdict that could restore her name or close this chapter of our lives. When the judge paused, his gaze met mine directly, and in that instant I knew nothing would ever be the same. My heart hammered as the judge leaned forward, his gaze unwavering and measured. I sat beside my lawyer on the polished oak pew, the scent of lilies mingling with the quiet hum of the organ in the background. The coroner's expert stood to one side, arms folded, lips pressed into a thin line. Outside the stained glass windows, the sun dipped low, casting amber light across skeptical faces. Every breath felt heavy, as if I were submerged beneath water, waiting for the verdict that would surface and either free me from this nightmare or drown me in doubt forever. I pressed my palms against my knees, nails digging into denim, and stilled myself for the words to come. The judge cleared his throat and spoke each sentence deliberately. He acknowledged my testimony as courageous yet unusual, then reviewed the medical reports presented by my lawyer. He cited the independent neurologists whose data confirmed full cerebral function following resuscitation. He referenced the time-stamped monitors that recorded her heart's return to rhythm. And then he paused, measuring the room's tension like a conductor before the final chord. When he pronounced that the death certificate would be amended to reflect her true cause of collapse, not definitive death, the hush that followed felt sacred. Relief washed over me, sharp and immediate, as though I were inhaling for the first time in days. A soft murmur rose among the mourners. Some faces softened, eyes glistening with apology or wonder, while others remained stony, stuck in disbelief. I closed my eyes for a moment, letting the weight of vindication settle into my bones. My lawyer exhaled beside me, his posture relaxing as though a rallying battle had finally been won. Yet beneath my triumph I sensed a new tension, a question that lingered like a shadow. If her collapse was not instant death, then what truly happened that night on the coastal highway? The lawyer caught my glance and nodded gently, as if reading my unspoken question. The legal fight had ended, but another search for truth was only beginning. After the brief recess, the priest invited me to approach the casket once more. I stood slowly, wreaths of white roses and lilies framing the polished pine lid. When I laid a hand upon the cool wood, I felt her presence wash through me with startling clarity. I spoke her name softly, voice cracking, and the congregation fell silent again. My truth had been heard, her memory restored. But then I felt the faintest tremor beneath my fingertips, as if the casket itself pulsed with a secret heartbeat. I withdrew my hand, startled, and glanced at the lawyer, who met my eyes with a questioning lift of his brow. I shrugged, unwilling to voice my fear that something remained hidden beyond the amended certificate. Following the ceremony, the sky had darkened, clouds gathering low over the graveyard. Mourners drifted away in small clusters, voices hushed and speculative. A local reporter approached with a recorder, asking for a statement. I managed a few sentences about closure and the importance of truth. The flash of a camera startled me, and I realized that our battle had caught the attention of more than the judge and the church. Rumors would spread, theories would flourish, and I would once again become the center of unwanted scrutiny. I felt vulnerable but resolute. I had fought for her life and her name. I could face public curiosity if it meant uncovering what really transpired. Later that evening, back in my apartment overlooking the rain-slick streets, I found an unmarked envelope slipped beneath my door. Inside were photographs of the wrecked car, battered and twisted, and a single page of text in crisp typewritten font. It alleged that the crash had been no accident, that someone had tampered with the guardrail and steered us into danger. The nerve in my gut twisted. Who would sabotage that road? Who would want us to die? The letter ended with a warning. Seek the truth at your own risk. My pulse quickened. The lawyer's confidence had carried me through the legal storm, but now a darker mystery beckoned. Rife with motives and hidden hands, I called my lawyer the next morning, his voice steady on the line despite the early hour. I read the letters. Contents aloud. He listened without interruption, then told me to gather every scrap of evidence I could find. We would consult an accident reconstruction expert and investigate the guardrail's maintenance records. He reminded me that obstacles often concealed deeper truths. I felt fear, yes, but entwined with a fierce determination. If someone had tried to kill us, I would expose them. I owed her that justice as much as I owed her the fight to amend her death certificate. The path before me was uncertain, but I would not turn back. Over the following days, I pored over the photographs, identified the location where the guardrail had been cut, and visited the county highway department. The official records seemed incomplete, as though pages were missing. I felt eyes watching me at every turn, townspeople once friendly, now nervous in my presence. An old mechanic at the local garage gave me a furtive tip about a suspicious delivery of cheap steel used to repair sections of the highway. He agreed to vouch for me if I promised discretion. Each clue wove a tapestry of conspiracy. Each whisper hinted at someone powerful protected by silence. Yet with every revelation I grew more determined to shine light into the darkness. A week later, I confronted the highway superintendent in his cluttered office. He squirmed under my questions, brow damp with sweat, until I mentioned the photographs and the typewritten warning. His composure cracked. He confessed that a construction contractor with political connections had rushed through repairs to cover up faulty welding. That negligence had created a weak point in the railing precisely where our car had gone off the road. His fear of retribution from local officials had led him to hide the truth. My blood pounded as I realized we had been victims of corruption rather than mere tragedy. I thanked him quietly and left with a recording of his confession saved on my phone. Back in my apartment, I listened to the superintendent's words and felt a profound shift within me. The fight for her life, the battle in the courtroom, the whispers in the church, each step had led to this moment of reckoning. I knew what I had to do next. I would share the recording with the district attorney and the press. I would honor her survival not only by restoring her memory but by demanding accountability for those who betrayed our trust. As dusk settled over the city skyline, I typed a message to my lawyer. We have our final piece of evidence. He replied with a single word. Let's finish this together. I closed my eyes, inhaled deeply, and prepared for the truth to emerge at last.